We are fortunate to have with us today another very courageous and conscientious crusader of truth and justice. It is my pleasure to call on a colleague of ours to introduce our distinguished keynote speaker. The person who will introduce our guest of honor is a former AMIC Secretary General, in fact, the first Filipino to ever hold that position. He is also a veteran journalist and now serves as the chair of the AMIC Board of Management. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Jose Maria Carlos.
Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Good morning to all our local and foreign delegates and to our special speakers and panelists. We have an outstanding keynote speaker in our midst, a former Associate Justice of the Philippines Supreme Court, and now the head of the Office of the Ombudsman, an important government agency that goes after corrupt officials and promotes integrity, efficiency, and high ethical standards in public service. Thank you. She graduated a valedictorian in elementary and high school and obtained her Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Bachelor in Laws, both from the University of the Philippines. What makes our keynote speaker remarkable? Let me share what some sectors or institutions in Philippine society say about her. The equivalent of the Nobel Prize in Asia, the Ramon Magsaysay Awards recognized her as the Philippines' 2016 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee for restoring faith in the rule of law. She was also recognized for her moral courage and commitment to justice. Through her example of incorruptibility, diligence, vision, and leadership, the award said she has promoted the highest ethical standards in public service. In the same year, the Philippines' premier academic institution, the University of the Philippines, her alma mater, conferred on her the degree of Doctor of Laws honoris causa. The conferment recognized her, and I quote, 28 years service to the judiciary unmarked by any accusation of impropriety. She was cited for being herself the measure of integrity in government service and the face of courage and daring determination, of competence and independence, and one of resolutely intolerant of corruption. In 2017, the Quezon City local government conferred on our keynote speaker the Tandang Sora Award. She was recognized for her ideals and virtues that mirror that of Filipino heroine Melchor Aquino, who took the moniker Tandang Sora. She was cited for possessing the virtues of honesty, industry, service, word of honor, and kindness. Our keynote speaker has many more awards and many more accomplishments and many more insights into a wide array of issues, including media and communication. No doubt we all want to listen to and learn from. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce and call on stage Ombudsman Justice Conchita Carpio Morales.
Thank you, Dr. Carlos, for such generous introduction. Dr. Crispian Maslow, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the SCN, Media Information and Communication Center Incorporated, or AMIC, Professor Ang Peng Hua, Chairman of Honor of AMIC, Dr. Francisco Benitez, President of the Philippine Women's University, Mr. Mel B. Velarde, President CEO of the Asian Institute of Journalism and Communication, officials and members of AMIC, my dear journalism and communication students from all over the country, participants to this AMIC 25th Annual Conference, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant morning. I must admit that when I received your invitation to give the inaugural address this morning, I was a bit reluctant, considering that I am not a communication scholar or a communication specialist like most, if not all of you. But your theme of rethinking communication intrigued me no end. Thus, I perused your background documents and discovered that you chose this theme because of your intent to question the seeming continuance of Western theories and models in the Asian communication setting. In the words of your former chairman, Professor Arun Mahitman of the National University of Singapore, we have for too long submitted to and submerged ourselves in Western perspective, Western theories, and worst of all, Western validation of our own nascent attempts to create anything Asian. I will not even attempt to examine the soundness and validity of this so-called Western bias. It is for the many scholars and students of journalism and communication in this forum to debate upon, for your two-day conference provides you a platform for the discussion. Allow me then to raise some non-theoretical basis on why there may be a need to rethink communication in the Philippines and even in the entire Asia-Pacific region. First, our society has entered the so-called post-truth era, where truth does not really matter anymore. AMIC seems to agree with us and with this, given that you have included freedom of expression in a post-truth era as one of your plenary sessions. Post-truth, named by the Oxford Dictionaries as the word of the year 2016, means relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. What happens then in a post-truth era when truth becomes irrelevant and elusive? The answer is simple. Rational discussions become irrelevant. This is exactly what is happening now. The glaring evidence can be easily found in your Facebook accounts. The advent of social media in the country and elsewhere in the world saw the truth of post-truth discourses, where emotional impact rather than truth is what matters. There is a lack of demand for truthful and honest discourse. Facebook and Twitter have become searing battlegrounds for propagandists, apologists, and more alarming, trolls and bots, who foremost among all discord among us a vulnerable, informed, and perhaps who over-entertain us through Google and at the same time primary source of information for just about everything. Worse, new communication tools are being used to stir up hate towards individuals and groups who are different politically or culturally. There is little room for tolerance as pride, prejudice, and bigotry prevail. It seems that a big part of the population would rather believe, like, and share fake news sites and echo the baseless assertions of dubious, albeit popular bloggers. They are no longer care to verify the authenticity of information fed to them, and mindful that bloggers, unlike journalists, are not sworn to observe the basic journalism tenets of accuracy and verification. Given this alarming trend, rethinking communication should mean making your audiences, to use your term, media literate, empowering them to discern, distinguish, and detect false narratives, especially the products of systematic efforts to rewrite history. Second, you need to rethink communication to fully understand how to make an impact in today's information overloaded society. How can one craft messages that resonate? To answer this question, perhaps communication scholars and strategists should carefully study the rhetoric and semiotics, so-called populist leaders around the world. Does falsehood rather than truth resonate? Do people listen only to what they want to hear and believe? Does the public want to hear something different? Crafting messages that resonate with the public is very important to the Office of the Ombudsman, which is a constitutional body in the Philippines mandated to fight corruption. With less than a year to my 7-year term, I must confess that I have yet to discover the magic formula on how to make the evils of corruption resonate, especially among the marginalized. My theory is that the average citizen still does not fully realize that he or she is the one being robbed by corrupt public officials, by the billions of pesos and not the government. To put it bluntly, in Filipino, ikaw po na street vendor, classroom teacher, estudyante, jeepney driver, or public health nurse, ang pinagnanakawan at hindi ng gobyerno pinagnanakawan ng mga kurapot. But is it also possible that the economically marginalized are fully aware of the impact of corruption, but they are not able to cry and protest because they are simply too busy and dead tired, eking out a living, fighting to survive, especially for their children? Many others remain apathetic to corruption and human rights violation, untouched as they are comfortably situated anyway, until the next tragedy hits home, a loved one becomes the victim. For this, I am reminded of the controversial quotation many attribute to Dante Alighieri's poem Inferno, and I quote, the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who in time of moral crisis preserve their neutrality, end of quote. Every peso stolen means less free medicine for indigent patients, less classrooms in remote villages, less farm-to-market roads to transport farmers' produce, and less food packs for victims of disaster and calamities. In other words, engaging in grand corruption is rewarding oneself big time for depriving or denying the fundamental human rights of others. Corruption and human rights are intrinsically linked. This makes the messaging even more complex, as human rights have become incomprehensible or distorted even among those who are sworn to defend it. This linkage between corruption and human rights is best described by former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan when he said, and I quote, corruption is an insidious plague that has a wide range of corrosive effects on societies. It undermines democracy and the rule of law, leads to violations of human rights. This evil phenomenon is found in all countries, big and small, rich and poor, but it is in the developing world that its effects are most destructive. Corruption hurts the poor disproportionately by diverting funds intended for development, undermining a government's ability to provide basic services, feeding inequality and injustice, and discouraging foreign aid and investment. A recent study also concluded that when corruption thrives, human rights are denied, and correlatively, when denial of human rights continues, corruption persists. This is one stark reality many countries must now face. Third, we need to rethink communication. Media audience is now dominated by millennials. They are digital natives who do not only consume media, but prefer creating their own content. Their major fear is FOLO, fear of life offline. Erstwhile, their fear was FOMO, fear of missing out. Preserving the status quo or being a mere passive spectator is out of the question, as their lifestyle and work style is ruled by engagement, creativity, innovation, and change. Perhaps it's about time to let the millennials take the driver's seat in communicating to various stakeholders. It's time to review your existing theories and paradigms, if only to check if they still fit the communication behaviors of our young publics. Last, rethinking communication has become inevitable as many countries in Asia and elsewhere now live in perpetual VUCA. VUCA what? VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. We simply have to read our front pages of our favorite brochures to realize how perplexing the world has become: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. These four elements do not always happen independently. They can happen simultaneously, and worse, can be self-inflicted because of misgovernance. The challenge to communication is to draft or craft communication strategies that can deliver effective messages, especially in the worst of times, and craft messages which can only reflect the truth and inspire and rekindle hope for the future amidst adversities. Allow me to end with a quote from the historical novel A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, more than a century ago, but eerily describes our present world. And I quote, "It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way." In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of the noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil, in the superlative degree of comparison only. End of quote. I wish you a successful conference, and for our foreign guests, I hope you enjoy your stay here because there's more fun in the Philippines. Maraming salamat po.